Picture this. It's a humid June night in 1974. The stands at Cleveland Municipal Stadium are packed with more fans than anyone expected, and each cup of beer costs just 10 cents. The Rangers are in town, a team that the Indians had brawled with just 6 days earlier, and by the end of the night, fans will be pelting players with rocks, streakers dashing across the field, and the game ending in a forfeit. This is the story of 10-cent beer night, a promotion that promised cheap suds but delivered chaos.
This is Distant Replay.
Welcome into Distant Replay. I am Ben George. We look back on sporting events that people remember, can't stop talking about, and tonight we've got a good one. We're going back to Cleveland on June 4th, 1974 for 10-cent beer night. You might have heard about it, but today we'll tell you that story. The city's baseball team, then called the Indians, now as you know the Guardians, was in the midst of a rough decade. Attendance at the cavernous Municipal Stadium had fallen so far that executives had seriously discussed bankruptcy. The team finished near the bottom of the standings year after year. Paul Jackson of ESPN later described that 1974 roster as a smorgasbord of mediocre and forgettable talent, playing in an open-air mausoleum with 85% of seats going unsold. So to give you a little context on pricing, 10 cents back in 1974 would be equivalent to about 65 cents in 2025, and that's a discount from that regular price of 65 cents, which they were normally paying for a beer back in 1974, which was the equivalent to $4.24 in 2025. Now, this wasn't as outrageous as it sounds on the surface. Other teams had held dime beer nights with little trouble. In fact, Cleveland had staged a nickel beer promotion in 1971. That was complete with strolling musicians and straw hats, and it was raved as a sun-spangled and peaceful event. Now, the Rangers themselves had hosted a similar event a week earlier, but there was one key difference. 6 days before Cleveland's dime beer night, the Indians and Rangers had been involved in a bench-clearing brawl in Arlington, and that was a game in which pitchers threw at batters and fans pelted Cleveland players with beer and food. So you kind of see how this is setting the stage for what would come on this evening. Now, asked whether he feared retribution from Cleveland fans, well, Rangers manager Billy Martin, who was never short of words, he snorted, "They don't have enough fans there to worry about." Well, Clevelanders heard that, of course, and local sports host Pete Franklin spent the following week stoking anger on the airwaves, and the stage was set. Cheap beer, a full moon, and a desire for payback for Cleveland fans. Now, the 10-cent beer night promotion offered 12-ounce cups of beer for just 10 cents, right? That discount, as I mentioned, was down from the 65 cents they normally paid at the ballpark. Now, officially, fans were limited to 6 beers per purchase. Now, think about that. Now, most parks you go to now, you can maybe get 2 beers at a time. 6 beers was the limit. Now, beyond that, there was not a limit on the number of purchases. So you could grab 6 for 60 cents, go back to your seat, drop them off, go right back to the concession stand, grab another 60 cents worth, and so forth and so on. According to longtime sports writer Dan Coughlin, more than 60,000 Genesee beers were sold that night. Only about 50 police officers worked security, and many arrived late or were off duty, probably not thinking too much about it. Okay, maybe a few rowdy fans, but, we can deal with that. The Indians also allowed fans to line up behind the outfield fences to fill their cups directly from the Strohs trucks. And to make matters worse, the crowd of about 25,000 was more than double the team's average attendance and included hundreds of college students that were home for the summer. Now, from the first pitch, it was obvious the promotion had attracted a rowdy crowd. No surprise, right? ESPN's account notes that hundreds of spectators came armed with firecrackers, setting them off in the stands and creating a war zone ambiance. Kind of thinking like an international sporting event, right? You see some of these soccer games, they get a little crazy with that. It was not short of entertainment in the stands. Many fans arrived drunk or high, too, on top of it all. And by those middle innings, the concession lines were so long that a team official decided, hey, we're going to let people fill their cups directly from those beer trucks. Yeah, pretty crazy decision. Now, for the game, the Rangers took an early lead. They had a home run from Tom Greavy. Shortly afterwards, a heavy-set woman climbed over the railing, ran toward the on-deck circle, and flashed her breaths at umpire Nestor Shilak, who got pretty involved in this game before it was all said and done. Shylock declined her attempt to kiss him that first time through. And then when Greavy hit his second home run, a naked man sprinted to second base and slid in, drawing cheers and dirt in places unsuitable for speculation. Quote from ESPN's depiction there. Now, minutes later, a father and son pair jumped out of the bleachers. They mooned the crowd and also slid into second base. Security chased the streakers across the field as fans cheered them on and roared their approval. The misbehavior wasn't confined to nudity. When Cleveland's Laron Lee lined a ball off Rangers pitcher Ferguson Jenkins' stomach, fans chanted, hit him again, harder, harder." In the fourth inning, Lee spiked Jenkins again on a close play at third, leading Rangers manager Billy Martin to argue the call. The stands erupted after that as fans began throwing cups of beer at him. Throughout the evening, fans hurled hot dogs, they threw rocks, chunked batteries, golf balls, even a jug of Thunderbird wine at players. One spectator lobbed lit firecrackers into the Texas bullpen like grenades, forcing Shylock to evacuate both bullpens and have pitchers warm up on the field. I mean, just complete madness. At this point, you're probably wondering, why haven't they either got this under control or just stopped the game completely? It already sounds like they've crossed the line. Different time and era 50 years ago, I guess. The Cleveland front office tried repeatedly to restore order, too. The announcer, Herb Score, implored fans not to run on the field, but the pleas obviously were ignored. When some fans attacked ushers who attempted to remove a female streaker, the crowd booed at him and cried, "Police brutality!" As the evening wore on, families and sober spectators quietly left the stadium, and that left an increasingly drunk and belligerent crowd behind. That was about all that would be left. And despite this escalating chaos, the umpires allowed the game to continue. And that brings us to the ninth inning. In the bottom of the ninth, the Indians staged a comeback, scoring 2 runs to tie the game at 5-5, and the potential winning run stood on second base when a 19-year-old fan named Terry Yurkich vaulted over the outfield fence and flipped the cap off Rangers right fielder Jeff Burroughs. This would go ahead and light the fuse. Burroughs tried to kick at Yurkich and tripped, and from the dugout, Billy Martin thought his player had been attacked, and he shouted to his team, "Let's go get 'em, boys," grabbing a bat and racing to right center field. You can see this picture clearly, right? Armed with bats, the Rangers charged across the diamond, and to their surprise, they found Burroughs unhurt, but were immediately surrounded by hundreds of drunken fans wielding knives, chains, and chair legs. As ESPN described, the 25 Rangers quickly found themselves encircled by about 200 angry drunks, with more pouring over the walls. Now, at that moment, Cleveland manager Ken Aspromonte did something remarkable. He ordered his own players to grab bats and go out there and defend those Rangers players who were their opponents, who they just had brawled with 6 days earlier. The Indians took off, sprinted from their dugouts into the chaos, wielding their bats to protect the Rangers and themselves. Now, in the melee, relief pitcher Tom Hilgendorf was struck in the head by a steel folding chair and left him bloodied. And then umpire Nestic Shylock, who has had plenty of involvement throughout this game and had to deal with so much besides calling balls and strikes and outs, he was hit by a chunk of stadium seat. And he later recalled seeing fans with knives and chains. And this is what he said about the mob. "You can't just pull back a pack of animals. When uncontrolled beasts are out there, you got to do something." Now on the radio, announcers Joe Tate and Herb Score described the scene live. "Oh, this is absolute tragedy. I've been in this business for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything as disgusting as this." That's what Tate said. Now, Score told listeners, "I don't think this game will continue, Joe. People keep jumping out of the stands after they see what's going on." Now, in a futile attempt to calm the crowd, the organist even played "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." I'm sure that really did the trick. I kind of picture the scene from the deck of the Titanic as I imagine that. Meanwhile, fans ripped up the bases, the field padding, and anything that was not nailed down was fair game in their minds. Recognizing now that the order could no longer be restored, I don't know why it took this long, Shylock forfeited the game to Texas, and he took his crew off the field with his head bleeding. Now, by the time police reinforcements arrived at the stadium, the lights were turned off, and the riot had lasted nearly 20 minutes. Only 9 fans were arrested. Coughlin later tallied the night statistics: 19 streakers, 7 emergency room injuries, 9 arrests, 2 bare moons, 2 bouncing breasts, and 1 sports writer punched. Now, as the teams kind of hunkered down and took safety in their clubhouse, The Indians players volunteered to escort the Rangers to their bus to make sure that they were not attacked by fans on the way out. And in the press conference afterwards, team president Ted Bonda explained, "Gentlemen, you're giving beer a bad name." While Aspermonte lamented, "It's not just baseball. Look at our people. They were worse. I don't know what it is. I don't know who's to blame, but I'm scared." The event made headlines nationwide, as you would imagine. Imagine if there was social media at a time and era like this. And the American League responded pretty quickly. The Indians announced that future dime beer promotions would limit fans to 4 beers apiece. So what a change. Down from 6, now they would limit to just 4 at a time. League president Lee McPhail went even further, suspending all team promotions pending a review. Now, you might think, okay, that will do it for beer night, right? Well, no. Cleveland held another 10-cent beer night on July 18th, just a month and a half after this night. This time there were 200 police officers in attendance. They prepared a little bit more, and each fan could buy only 2 beers at the reduced price. More than 41,000 people came to that game, but it went on without incident. You imagine 10-cent beer night quickly took on a mythic quality. For years, the stadium's missing bases never reappeared. Broadcaster Tim Russert, who you've seen on NBC and who had a long career. He was a law student at the time, and he joked that he attended that game, and he did it with $2 in his pocket, and he said, "You do the math." Mike Hargrove, who played first base for Texas that night and later managed Cleveland, was a big part of the Indians franchise. He kept a photo of the riot on his office wall. Sports historians list the riot among baseball's few forfeits, and it's a cautionary tale for overzealous promotions. It sits alongside Washington's 1971 Senators' farewell riot and that Chicago disco demolition night in 1979. You can tell the 70s were a different era in the baseball world. The fiasco also inspired changes to stadium security, as you would imagine, and alcohol policies across Major League Baseball. For Cleveland fans, however, 10-cent beer night has become a part of the city's lore. As MLB.com's Anthony Castroventz wrote on its 40th anniversary, many locals now view the event as more a source of civic pride than embarrassment. T-shirts even sold at the ballpark. And, you know, when you look back, that second beer night, when you look back and saw that proceeded smoothly and those around it, right, similar promotions had worked out all right. Really, just a reminder, this was a perfect storm that night, right? Cheap beer, hot tempers, full moon, and then, of course, not enough stadium staffing and security. So, look, when you look back on it, obviously a warning about promotions gone wrong. Things have obviously changed over the years about the way games are promoted, promotions are run. But the Indians at that time were desperate to fill seats, and they succeeded, but it was a steep cost. And that one humid night in 1974, cheap beer turned a baseball game into a brawl. It forced rival players to unite against their own fans. We can look back now and laugh a little bit at the streakers and the stolen bases, but it's a reminder that in sports as in life, there's a fine line between festive and frenzy. Thanks for listening to another episode of Distant Replay. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe. Let us know what other events you'd like us to revisit. We'll have more coming soon. Thanks for listening.